Abel, damina is my name. Look. I couldn't wait to get back home and be a part of the ongoing conversation. There's been this conversation going on whether there's a genocide in Nigeria or there's no genocide in Nigeria. And I listen to certain individuals who say there's no such thing in Nigeria. Well, whether you call it genocide or you don't call it genocide, let me speak as a victim. I am not just a student of research, but I'm speaking as a victim of these gruesome circumstances around the Nigerian people, where innocent lives have been taken away by some people who think they have more right than others in this nation. And some people have reduced it to herders and farmers clash. No, sir, this has been ongoing. I grew up in northern Nigeria. My father was a pastor with the Assemblies of God Church. One morning we just woke up in Assemblies of God Church, Samaru Zaria, somewhere adjacent the north gate of Samaru Zaria. My father was a pastor. All of a sudden we woke up in the morning, no provocation, nothing. And the next thing we were hearing was people were just running all over our house and the church with machetes and all of that. The next thing was they started pouring petrol all over the building, both the church and the house, because our house was attached to the church. And the next thing was flames. Everything was burned right down to ashes. We narrowly escaped, found a place where we could shelter ourselves in the military barracks. Eventually, they brought us back to the lecturers' quarters of ABU Zaria, and we had to camp with a family for weeks and months before we could rebuild and start life all over again. That is long. I'm talking about 1986, 87. What about the Metasine situation? Metasine was a sect of the Islamic religion who went around burning and destroying and killing Christians back in the 80s. This is far before there was anything like farmers and herders clash. Then fast forward. What about in the year 2000, where over 2,000 people were killed in Kaduna? Year 2000. What about the over 300 people that were victims of the Miss World in November 2002? All of them, they were not a part of the Miss World. They were just on their own. Something happened somewhere else, and they became victims of it. Lives were killed, houses were destroyed, and whenever they are carrying out this charade, they will be shouting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and they will carry their matches and carry whatever they have, and they will move in their numbers. And everybody on their way that is not chanting what they are chanting becomes a victim. I can go on and on. A few years ago, I was preaching in Kaduna for a great man of God. And I only succeeded in preaching Sunday morning service. After the service, the next morning, as we were preparing for the next service on Monday, the next thing I was hearing was the whole city is on fire. Kaduna is on fire. Please stay in the hotel room. Don't come out. They are burning churches. They are killing everybody. That is how we were stuck in a hotel. Even in the hotel, we were not sure of ourselves, because they were going from hotel to hotel, room to room, killing people that were not chanting Allahu Akbar. And somehow God saved our souls. After about 4 days, we were able to leave Kaduna. But unfortunately, a friend of mine who was a pastor, Reverend Northcote Andrew of blessed memory, was caught in the midst of this as he was escaping for his life. They caught him because he was wearing a collar of a bishop. They hacked him to death, dug the ground, buried him and put a cross there. It is that little wooden cross that made people know that there was a corpse in that place. And this, my friend, was buried. These are real life situations. So for somebody to just sit down in the comfort of his home, maybe somewhere in the south, and be saying there's no such thing in northern Nigeria, my brother, you've not been a part of it. We've been right in the heart of the fire. I remembered one night, these Muslim boys were all over the place in my school, and they were shouting Allahu Akbar. They were looking for me. I had to escape. That night, my saving grace was that I found a female hostel and I slept under the bed. By the next day, I left town. For what? I did nothing. No provocation. Just because I am preaching the gospel. And of course, some of them believe that once you are not of the Islamic faith, you are an infidel. And they believe that if you kill an infidel, you will sleep with 7 virgins. All of this kind of indoctrination that leads to violence at the slightest provocation. Whether it has to do with the people or not, you just get on the streets. What about the Reinhard Bonnke crusade? I'm talking about the Reinhard Bonnke crusade in Kano, where people were hacked, macheted, and killed just because a crusade where the gospel of Christ was going to be preached. And that is why I thank God for people like President Donald Trump, who lent his voice to what is going on here. At least For whatever is what, there's an ongoing conversation all over the world. The matter is no more put under the carpet. And we don't want just conversations. We want some action. We want some action. And in the midst of all this, it snowballed into the herders and farmers clash. It snowballed into banditry, and everything becomes very complicated. Very complicated. And people are dying by the day. There are people in northern Nigeria, places like Borno State, places like Plateau State, places like Benue State, places like southern Kaduna, where whole villages have been taken over by some of these bandits, by some of these Islamic extremists, by some of these Boko Haram people. They've taken over whole villages, driven the villagers away. And somebody said there is no such thing in Nigeria. Why do we have IDP camps? Why do we have IDP camps? When we never had an earthquake, we never had an earth tremor, why do we have IDP camps when there is no natural disaster? Other than the fact that people are being made victims of what they have no knowledge of. In a secular state like Nigeria, where all religions are permitted to be practiced, this ought not to be allowed. This ought not to be allowed at all. Our government have a duty. Now, when you live in a country like that, where you don't know what becomes of you the next day, you go out, you don't know if you're going to come back. When you go to church, you're not sure if you're going to come back. When you live in such a country, it's almost as if there's no government. And because the first responsibility of government is security of lives and properties. That's the first responsibility of government, whether at the federal level, at the state level, or at the local government level. Because the population don't have access to arms. But unfortunately, some of these bandits, some of these terrorists, some of these extremists, they are carrying AK-47s, and you wonder, where did they get them from? In fact, it's unfortunate that at a point in Nigeria, there was even a local government in Borno State where Boko Haram drove all our Nigerian security forces and put their flag there. It's very unfortunate. And the government of Nigeria needs to do something quickly. Otherwise, where this is taking us to, we do not know. This has to come to an end. The ADP camps need to be emptied. Let people go back to their homes. Let people go back to their villages. Let people go back to their farmlands. Let people go back to their habitations, so that they can live normal lives. So they can live the life they are supposed to live on earth. You know, this is very important. And this conversation is so critical at this time. And it's critical that I add my voice to it as a victim of this situation in a country like Nigeria. And I'm believing God that the day has come when this menace will surely come to an end. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Amen.